Welcome to The Explainer. Have you ever wondered what would happen if one tiny event in the past went differently? I mean, really differently? Today, we're jumping into a story that does just that, exploring how a single moment can crack reality open and create a whole new world.
So let's imagine this for a second. You wake up one day and everything looks familiar, but it's off. That's exactly what happens to our main character, a historian named Professor Gaitande. He finds himself on a journey that's going to challenge everything he thinks he knows about his country, his own life, and reality itself.
Okay, so our story kicks off with Professor Gaitande on a pretty normal train ride into Bombay. Or at least it should be normal. But as he gets closer to the city, the world outside his window just starts to feel, well, just wrong.
He's on the train, and a guy sitting with him, Khan Zahab, says something casual that just completely pulls the rug out from under him. The British Raj? For the professor, who comes from an independent India, hearing that is a massive shock. It's the first huge clue that he's somehow landed in a place where history took a very different path.
And it's not just one thing. The clues just keep stacking up. The trains have markings for a railway he's never even heard of, and they've got little Union Jack flags painted on them. He gets to the station, and it's full of British officers. And then the real kicker, the East India Company, which in his world is a dusty old relic from the history books, is here, a massive, thriving business.
So you can imagine, the professor's mind is just reeling. But he's a historian, right? So after the initial shock, his professional brain kicks in. He's got to figure this out. He comes up with a plan. Get to a library, find the history books, and pinpoint the exact moment where his world and this world split.
So he heads to the library, and you know what he does? He grabs his own 5-volume History of India. He starts reading, and everything's normal, everything is just as he wrote it, until he gets to the last book. And that's where he finds it.
And bam, this is it. This is the turning point, the Battle of Panipat. On one side, you've got our history. The Marathi leader, Vishwas Rao, gets hit by a bullet and dies. The army loses all its morale, they get crushed, and that opens the door for the British. But then look at the other side. In this world's history, the bullet misses him. The army's morale goes through the roof. They win the battle, and the future of India is completely changed. Get this, he finds a book from that other world, a historical account called a Bahar, and it describes the moment perfectly. It says a shot just brushed past his ear. And the difference, it says, was as small as a till, a sesame seed. Think about that. One tiny, random event, the width of a single seed, saved a man, changed a battle, and rewrote the history of an entire nation.
So he's just had this massive, world-altering breakthrough, and then all of a sudden, chaos. He wanders into a lecture, tries to sit in the empty chairman's seat, and the crowd just erupts. They rush the stage, and the next thing he knows, everything goes black. He wakes up, and he's back in his own world.
So of course, he tries to explain this insane experience to his friend, a scientist named Rajendra Deshpande. And you can imagine, Rajendra's like, yeah, right, you were in an accident, you must have been dreaming. He's a total skeptic. That is, until the professor shows him something he brought back.
The proof. It's a single, torn page he must have shoved in his pocket in the chaos. And it's from that Bakar, the history book from the other world. A book that shouldn't exist. It's a physical object from a parallel reality. And just like that, this isn't some crazy story anymore. It's a scientific mystery.
Now, with this impossible proof right in front of him, Rajendra's whole mindset shifts. He stops being a skeptic and starts thinking like a scientist. He actually comes up with a way to explain the professor's entire journey, not as fantasy, but using two really fascinating and kind of weird scientific theories.
Okay, so the first idea is something called catastrophe theory. It's basically a fancy way of saying that sometimes a tiny change can cause a huge, sudden shift in a complex system. You know, like the straw that breaks the camel's back. That's catastrophe theory.
And the Battle of Panipat? It's a textbook example. You had two armies pretty much evenly matched. A real nail-biter. The whole thing was balanced on a knife's edge, and the fate of just one person, the leader, Vishwasrao, was that tiny little variable. In our world, he dies, and morale collapses catastrophically. In the other world, he lives, and morale surges. One small change, two completely different outcomes.
But that only explains how history could have split in two. It doesn't explain how the professor actually went there. For that, Rajendra brings up something even weirder, quantum physics.
See, at the super tiny subatomic level, things get fuzzy. You can't ever know exactly where an electron is or what it's doing. You can only know the probability of all the things it could be doing.
And this is where things get really wild. Rajendra basically asks, if a tiny little electron can exist in multiple states all at the same time, well, why can't reality? What if there isn't just one world? What if all the possible histories, all the alternate realities, are all existing right now, at the same time?
So wait a minute. What does all this actually mean for the professor? Did he build a time machine and go to the past? Or the future? What happened here?
And the answer, at least in this theory, is no. It's not about time travel. He didn't go backward or forward in time. He made a transition. Think of it like changing lanes on a highway. He was always in the present. He just slid over into a different lane, a different version of the present that had branched off from ours centuries ago.
Which leaves us with one last huge question, the biggest one really. If he could just jump between worlds like that, what was the trigger? What was the key that let him cross that bridge in the first place?
And this is the kicker. At the exact moment of his truck accident, right before he made the jump, what was on his mind? He was literally thinking about catastrophe theory and wondering what would have happened if that battle had gone the other way. Rajendra's idea is that the neurons in his brain, focused so intensely on that specific what if, acted like the trigger, the quantum key that unlocked the door to that other world.
So the story leaves us with this powerful, mind-bending idea that our world might just be one of countless realities, and each one spun off from a single moment of chance. It really makes you think, right? What little moment in your own life was the turning point? What tiny decision or accident created the world that you're living in right now?